So let's establish your football credentials. You are and were a part of the fraternity of players. How did you know football was your sport, was your thing?
I was a big guy growing up, and everybody just assumed that I would play football. And started off playing basketball. Didn't really have a lot of history in playing football at all. And then we had these bullies on our street, and they used to like to pick on everybody. But me and my brother were the only guys that would stand up to him. He's like, you know what? We need to get a little stronger. We was like, let's try to play football. And so that's how we initially got into it. We just wanted to get stronger and tougher so we can beat up these bullies that live down the street from us. And my big brother, he went first, and I kind of chased behind him a few years later. Coach thought I'd be a quarterback. And he saw me throw a ball a couple times. He's like, okay, we're going to try a few other positions. And before I finally ended up finding out that was a pretty good offensive lineman.
By the way, did the bullies back off?
The bullies did back off. It's good when you can stand up for yourself and recognize that you're not going to back down from going to the store like your mama asked you to do.
When did you determine or realize that you had some skill to be effective in the game of football?
It's a progression. I think your first year you're playing, you're learning the ropes, and you're playing against some veterans that are kicking your butt even in high school. And then as you start progressing, going into your junior year, you're realizing like, okay, you're playing good against some of the guys who are all state and the guys who have been playing the game for really good for a long time. And then going into my junior year in high school, I was being recognized as the #1 recruit in the state of Michigan.
In the state of Michigan?
In the state of Michigan.
Football territory.
Absolutely. So it was just, I'm like, okay, this thing is really taking off. And I was able to choose any college in the country that I wanted to go to, from Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Tennessee, Florida State. All of them were just giving me offers, and it was kind of a cool place to be as a young kid growing up in Detroit.
Maurice Williams, that's pretty heady stuff, and you wound up going to Michigan, continue to progress as you measured yourself against other talented, superb athletes around the country. What were you recognizing about yourself then that could lead to the next level?
Well, one of the biggest changes when you go from high school to college is the game is that much faster. Guys are that much stronger. So during rookie camp, I was dominating, just beating everybody. But then the veterans came. And still holding my own, but it wasn't the same as going to guys that were my peers in my same age group. And I did play as a true freshman in college. We actually won the national title my first year. And, Tom Brady was one of the quarterbacks there, so it's kind of cool to see him progress in his career. But also, as we continue to progress, like going into my junior year again, I recognized like, okay, I'm playing good against first-round draft picks, guys who are now have a name in the NFL. Like maybe I have a shot here. And so you just kind of see, okay, and there's something that's taking place in my NFL career.
What do you consider to have been your highest achievement in sports in the collegiate ranks?
In the collegiate ranks, I think coming in my first year winning a national championship, and then we won 3 Big Ten championships after that. I think it was really special, and this is the expectation to win. So that was really cool. And then, so in the collegiate ranks, that would be my highlights, and just being able to go out there and play in front of 100,000 people every week. And at the University of Michigan was really special.
This question is kind of off on a service road. You mentioned Tom Brady. So what did he bring to the table that provided the foundation to be considered one of the all-time greats?
Absolutely. One of the things I saw when I was back in college from him is his ability just to lead. He always had a leadership and quality.
What does that mean?
He had command of the huddle, and you just believed that he was able to do what his job required him to do. And I think that's one of the things that he's continued to develop over the years. You look at this past game, I was watching him on the sideline, they was down by like a minute and 30. It was like, okay, I've been here. So it's just kind of cool as one of his former teammates to still watch God just use him and what he's doing. But he's definitely gifted as a leader, and he's definitely as a hard worker and has developed his craft.
Step outside of yourself and talk about what other characteristics, aside from the football specifics, do you think you possess as a player? Because to play at the NFL level for 9 years, as you did, I mean, that is no small feat at all.
Absolutely. Just to play in NFL is another high level. We talked about going from high school to collegiate. Now collegiate to pro game is that much faster. Guys are that more determined. And so you really have to know your craft. You really have to learn how to discipline your body, eat right, train, weight train, and make sure you're taking care of your body. But you also have to be a student of the game. And when being a student of the game, you have to study film. You have to study yourself. You have to make sure, how can I become stronger the next season? So one of the things in sports that you have to always guard against is becoming complacent. Like, oh, that was a good year last year. But you have to remember there's 32 other guys who are training to beat you or to beat you in that next season. So you have to go into knowing that you have to continue to work your craft, continue to get better. And it's just it's a holistic effort as well. As you grow, you recognize, okay, that not only means me just physically working out, but me keeping my temple clean as well. So then spiritually, make sure I had a connection with God is important as well.
Thank you for leading me to that phase then, because everything that you've talked about is foundational qualities that defined your success in college and at the pro level. There would seem to be a corollary in terms of your faith walk. When did faith become important to you?
It began pretty much in high school. As junior, I didn't grow up in the church. And,
Did not grow up in the church?
I did not grow up in the church. My junior year in high school, I just started having all these questions about God. If there was a God, what do
What do
you
you think precipitated that?
I think this guy was just really starting to reach out to me. And I think there was just a season of life that I was in. I think my attention had now been brought into like, hey, there is a God out here. And so there was television programs that started grabbing my attention. I remember watching some shows on BET, the gospel choirs. I'd never seen gospel choirs before. I'm like, man, this is amazing. I'm loving this music. And then I also remember just people starting to talk about God. And then one of my teammates who played in the NFL for a very long time as well, he got saved, and I remember how wild he was, and he came back, and his conversation changed. All of a sudden, he was talking about what he was learning at church and how God wants to bless you, and I'm sitting there like, man, this is amazing. And so he invited me. He's like, hey, do you want to come to church with me? I was like, absolutely. And I remember running to the altar. I remember loving everything about the service, the worship, the music, everything that was going on, the word that was being put forth. And so there was an invitation extended, and that's where this journey began for me. And so I go back to this, and I just think about that was the beginning, but I'm also thankful for how patient God has been with me, because you had looked at my life after that, he's like, this guy's not a Christian.
Yeah, and you're not ashamed to say that.
I'm not ashamed to say that, because I understand that there's a process of sanctification that we all have to go through, and and that He's the one that justifies, He's the one that makes us righteous. And so really, it wasn't until my second year in the NFL that I was trying to do things like the world's way. I still love going to Bible studies in church, but I also wanted to fit in to be like everybody else. And I remember going down to Daytona and got down there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 3 o'clock in the morning, all I hear is there has to be more. There has to be more. Because what I was trying to do was fulfill my soul, pretty much what I needed in life from what the crowd had to say, from what the media had to say, and trying to live this lifestyle that was being perpetuated by our neighborhood, and that was really being perpetuated by God. And so I was having this emptiness on the inside of me. So I knew what it was, 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 3 o'clock in the morning, there has to be more. It's like, you know what? I'm surrendering to Christ, and I'm going to stop trying to fit in and just really trust God that He's doing a unique work in me. And I can tell you, I have freedom that came from there. It's been amazing.
One would think, especially in the world of professional sports, because so many people have a perception about professional athletes that may or may not be right, and you are expected to fit a stereotypical perception of what a professional athlete is like. Did you have to fight against the grain, even hearing God talk to you and calling you, but the money, the ladies running after you, the lifestyle, the hedonistic pursuits, pursuit of pleasure, if you will, were those things that were hard for you to fight against? How difficult or not was it?
I think once I made the decision, saying, you know what, this is the life I'm going to choose. For me personally, okay, I just set this is the direction I'm going. I'm not looking back, because I love the freedom I was experiencing. I love the joy that I was experiencing because of this me embracing who I was in Christ. But that didn't stop the persecution. I had coaches, I had players who were concerned about this new choice of lifestyle.
Coaches seeing that new lifestyle. What does that mean? How did that express itself?
So they saw me going to all the Bible studies. They knew what I was going to church in town. They knew, and coaches who are probably unbelievers or not really understanding what it means to be a Christian often wonder, okay, are you becoming soft? Like, what is really going on here? And so for me, I just like, you know what, this is who I am. But I had great examples before me at the time, Tony Baselli, Mark Brunell, and I remember just watching other players who are just monsters at the game, and they were unashamed of their faith as well. So I was like, you know what? I can play this game. I could be just as tough. I could be just as diligent as anybody on this team. And for me, it was an opportunity just to learn like who I was as a Christian, but also how to defend myself against the people who have maybe something to say about my faith as well. And God just used that over and over again, even as a player. So it's kind of cool.
Maurice, because this is the overwhelming perception that if you are a man of faith, inevitably people associate that with being soft.
Mm-hmm.
How did you attempt to dispel that notion, that perception with your coaches? Because coaches are position coaches, in essence. Those are your bosses who are going to, say whether or not you should still be there or not.
Oh, yeah.
How did you deal with that? By example, conversation, both, or what?
By example. And this, it's really not a lot of words you can say. It's just really going out there and doing your craft and doing it well. So no matter who lined up in front of me, I was going to give you the business. So it's just going out there and just really just playing the game the way it's supposed to be played. As an offensive lineman, you're asked to be physical. You're asked to move big men, and that's my job, was to protect the quarterback and open up holes for running back. And so each week I went out there and played for his glory. For a while, I was really focused on what my coach had to say. I was really making sure that I pleased him every week, and I recognized that was leaving me empty. There was never enough that I can do to please him. And I remember carrying around like this heaviness, like, man, this season, it had one season where it was probably not going the way I wanted it to. And the coach asked me afterwards, he was like, so how do you think you played? In this game, I felt like I did pretty good. I felt like that was pretty good. And he was like, no, that's not good enough. And it was like a gut punch. I'm like, man, I'm out here playing my tail off. And one of my teammates came to me afterwards, and he gave a scripture to me, Colossians 3:23. And he was just really just saying, everything that you do it on for the glory of God and not on for man. And I took that and I embraced that the rest of my career. I said, God, when I go out here, I'm doing this as I'm worshiping for an audience of one. I'm not caring about what the media has to say or even my family and friends, but I'm going out here to play my tail off for you. And for the next several years of my career, there was such a blessing and freedom even approaching the game that way.
How did you deal with losing from the perspective of a Christian and still going out to fulfill Colossians 3:23?
Absolutely. And so just thankful for the opportunity to have just to play in the league, and recognize there's not a lot of men that have this opportunity that I have. And I want to go out there and win every week. Every game I give it my all to win. But sometimes we don't have maybe not the right personnel. Maybe the other team is just flat out better than us. But one thing that I always would do is make sure that I gave my best effort. So at the end of the day, say, you know what, I did my part to help my team win. But even amidst a winning or a losing season, just being able to be thankful for the opportunity, just because opportunities like this, opportunities to play on the football field, it's not something that happens every day in life. And so just keeping it in the right perspective and the word really helped me to do that.
How in the world do you go from being a professional football player to being a chaplain on the team for whom you played?
Absolutely. It's really, it's unique that now that God has me in this position. It's like really what I'm doing now is what I was doing as a player. In that environment, just really encouraging my teammates to come to chapels and Bible studies and just really growing in their faith and praying before games. There's some of these things that I was already doing. But it's just cool that once I really started perceiving the call of God at Bible school, God started talking to me about sports ministry and what he wanted to do with that. And I actually got connected with Athletes in Action about 3 years ago at a leadership summit that they had where Tony Dungy was there, and Corin and John Townsend, and just really just poured into us that weekend. And the whole time I'm there, just like, man, don't reinvent the wheel. Don't reinvent the wheel. Because I was thinking about sports ministry, like on how to do it. And everything when I looked at their vision and mission statement of the organization, this was like, man, this is everything that you've been talking to me about, God. So God has kind of sovereignly kind of put this all together. And it really came down to, it's like, we know that we're supposed to be in this role. My lead that's over us is looking for chaplains to fill other chaplain positions around the league. And he was like, we have position here. And I was just like, man, me and my wife were just building a house. I was like, man, we really feel like we're supposed to be in Jacksonville. This is going to be weird. And I was like, Lord, I can't bring this to my wife. That's going to be pretty heartbreaking. But we both looked at each other like, if this is what God is wanting us to do, then we'll step out. And the very next day, we get a call saying that the position in Jacksonville is open up for you to be the chaplain. So we were just like, wow. And so this year has been pretty amazing, just to kind of see God's faithfulness and really how he's equipped us to go and make an impact in that locker room.
Coach Tony Dungy, what about his story influenced you?
Just as you can just tell that God has just really worked on his heart, and he's so humble, and all the great things that he's been able to accomplish, and he just has a natural passion for Christ, and he's one of the guys who's using this platform well. And so I've always just gleaned from his leadership principles and just being able to see how God can use a man who doesn't necessarily, he's not seeking to get out there and jump in front of the camera and to do all these different things, but he's just open for God to allow him to use him. So that's a trait I would love to have.
Because you are from the fraternity of players, how are today's younger players, even though, again, you're from that group. How are they receiving you?
I think they're receiving me well. I think going into this year, and I knew this, and so you know the call, and you know what you're supposed to do, and you've seen somebody else do it, and you go in like, okay, how's this going to be for me? I think, but before the day I even got down to the field, I got a phone call from a player, and I was like, hey man, what's up? I was like, you know, how's everything going? And you get this tell that there's something going on. So I was like, hey, what's like you want to meet? He's like, yes. I was like, just come on over. So he comes over to the house, and I actually knew him before, so it was cool. But we just began to talk, and as he was talking, like, man, this is everything that you're going through is what I went through. And so I had time just to give him wisdom from how God led me through it, and then to give him some peace as well, like, God, you'll be all right. And just and that reminded me just how God, when he prepares you for something, he prepares you for a reason. And even stuff that we go through that we don't want to go through, that God will use those moments as well.
Yours is a little unique a situation in that your team owner is a Muslim, and you're a Christian chaplain. How is that working? Any kind of issues, any kind of challenges that you've run into?
I have not run into any challenges. I'm always mindful of that because I want to be respectful of other religions, absolutely. And one of the cool things that we have is Tom Coughlin and Doug Marone. They are both Catholic believers as well, and so there's just a faith about a locker room that's undeniable. So whether you're Muslim, whether you're Buddhist, I think you have to respect that the players there's a religious element to the game. So one of the things I'm always amazed about, I pray for the guys before we head out. More than 90% of the team is there.
More than 90% of the team is there.
More than 90% of the team is there for prayer, and then we'll do my prayer. Then we'll do the Lord's prayer, and then we break out. And then I notice that there's prayer groups happening over here. There's prayer groups happening over there. So people are seeking God, whether they're coming to chapel or not. They recognize that there's a higher power, and they want protection when they're out there in that field. Because one, they want blessing. They want to have a career that can be sustained. So sometimes it is the luckiest rabbit's foot, but then sometimes these guys are just truly are thankful for the opportunity to play in the National Football League.
You've already articulated a scripture that is near and dear to you. Doing all that you do heartily as unto the Lord and not unto men, Colossians 3:23. Is there any part of the Bible, I know all the word is good, but is there any part that maybe is special to you or where you're focused right now in your walk?
Well, I just came out of 2 weeks of seminary as a intense course, and we just studied the whole book of Ephesians. And one of the things is that that probably would just stick out for the time and the season that we're in is that this being recognizing that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, against powers and principalities, and recognize that we do need the whole armor of God. Just like as football players, we go out there and we put on the helmet, we put on the shoulder pads, and we put on all the thigh pads and different things. We go out there to be protected, is that we have to remember as Christians and as believers that we need the full armor of God, because we got an enemy that's always waiting, and he's always working his schemes to pick us off. But we have to always be ready to have that sword of the Spirit to also go out there in action as well.
Something about today's athlete or the world of sports that the public would not truly understand, particularly as it relates to who the athletes are, what kind of challenges that they're dealing with, and why your position is a valuable one.
Absolutely, that they're real people. And this more than just football players or some superhero that this country or we would like to lift up, but they have real people, they have real families, they have real issues, they have real emotional problems, real things that they deal with. They deal with losses in their families, just like everybody else would. And one of the vehicles that we serve as chaplains is that we have an ability to minister to that. And one of the things that the players don't get a chance to do during the season is to go to church or to really connect with a community of other believers. And to have chaplains that have the heartbeat of the players and the coaches and the organization that prays for them, now is the opportunity for us to really just to be the hands of Christ and really just love on them exactly where they are.